Human beings have invisible fences. The invisible fences are our comfort zone, and they operate just like the invisible fence does with the dog. Fire alarm goes off in the hotel. 2:20 in the morning. I didn't start fussing and getting mad about why is this going on. I'm like, there's a fire. I need to get out of here because this is a warning. I tell people, constrictive fear will keep you locked in a room with an open door. Why does not move you to action? When you say, what is it I need to do differently? Now that moves me to doing something. It's concerning the number of churches that are closing. The baby boomers and are going away, and then there's no planning coming behind that, and churches are just kind of it's almost at a incredible sort of rate right now. If our congregation today, your congregation today, were to go out of business, close its doors, and if the community is not in sackcloth and ashes, asking what in the world we're going to do because such and such is not here anymore, then we're not making an impact.
Welcome to the People Growth Discipleship podcast. Don't just grow your church, grow your people. I'm your host, Kendra Dublin, the pastor's ally, and this season's theme is Intergenerational Discipleship from the womb to the tomb. We will discuss various subtopics to aid church leaders and be a bridge for discipleship resources, partnerships, and strategies. If that sounds edifying to your walk with Christ and your congregation, then tune in. Hi, everyone. It's Kendra Dublin, and we are back for another episode of People Growth Discipleship. I am so excited about this episode because I have my brother Dwayne Scott here with me. Yes, thank you, brother Dwayne.
Glad to be here.
Yes, when I was thinking about this subtopic, after God was like, you need to speak about, intergenerational discipleship and generational discipleship. Like, who could I invite that understands, this topic? And I just remember when you were doing consulting work for my church a few years back, and I'm like, he knows. I need to contact Brother Scott. And so I was like, Dad, what's Brother Scott's number? I need it.
Good.
So I'm excited about this conversation and your expertise over the years in doing this kind of work. So thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely.
So I have a few rapid fire questions to ask you, and before we get into your subtopic. So.
Okay.
Which discipleship relationship is goals for you? So I have a few that I want to share with you. So which one is goals for you? Moses and Joshua, Ruth and Naomi, Samuel and Eli, Elijah and Elisha, Esther and Mordecai, or Paul and Timothy?
I would say Elijah and Elisha would be my go-to.
Okay. And why would those two be your go-to?
Well, what you see is that relationship was so unique, and before Elijah was taken up, he asked a real unique question of his protege.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have, And it was kind of like that Solomon question when the Lord,
Yes.
and he could ask for a lot of different things. He said, I want a double portion of your spirit. Matter of fact, I preached a sermon a few weeks ago called Two Scoops, okay? And the visual was 2 scoops of ice cream, okay? And I said, one scoop looks good, okay? But he said it wasn't ice cream. I'm talking about of your spirit, of your anointing. I want a double portion of that,
Yes.
which speaks to the maturity that he had come to in following him, And so because so many times the mentee is a product of the mentor. And so evidently he had poured in him in some ways and seen some things. He said, I want a double portion of what God's given you. So that to me is the perfect kind of scenario though. So I like that one. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I love the answer. If you could live in a certain era of the Bible, which one would it be and why?
You know what? I think right here, right now, Kendra.
Okay.
I think right here, right now, and there's a lot of conveniences right now. Okay, and I'm going to talk on my flesh a minute. Okay, there's a lot of conveniences that we have right now, but at the same time, Kendra, there is when you look at the things we've been able to experience in our lifetime, and one of my favorite books, go-to books, is Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. And I like that book because it speaks to why God put us here. It's biblically, those principles come straight from the Word. But one of the things God, and I think about this often, God put us here at this point in time in this space because He wants us to make our impact on the world. And when you think about some things, we've seen a pandemic. I mean,
Yes.
the entire world shut down. The entire world shut down.
Yes.
I mean, that's only happened a few times in history, but we were part of that,
Yes.
and we've seen,
Mm.
and I think probably the best is yet to come. As far as some of the things we had,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a lot of lessons learned. I know there was as I consult with churches, and how people had to change how they viewed things because of that. So I'm really, really just excited about being at this point in time and saying, Lord, let me use me, let me be a tool to sort of influence at this point in time, because I'm intoxicated by that, okay? And I think that it's a perfect thing
Yes.
for us. So that's why I would say right here, right now.
Mm. I love that. Right here, right
That's
now.
right.
What is God currently dealing with you on when it comes to discipleship?
Yeah, I think we're all in this role of continuous improvement. If we're looking in the mirror, there's nothing
Yes.
that happens without God's permission. We're going
Mm-hmm.
through right now. Our greatest challenge, I think, right now is we're preparing at the congregation where I'm at. We are preparing to exit the stage and bring on young folks that's going to carry the church on. And as you do any time thing like that, there's some you got equilibrium. Then you have this when you upset that, and it's like okay, but getting everybody in that mindset, our elders, our ministers, in that mindset, and we know, we're getting to step off the stage, and they're going to step on. So the challenges of that, preparing the congregation for that, from elders, from ministers, and our pulpit might look different from the standpoint of we're thinking we may do multiple ministers instead of just one pulpit. Man, we don't know. It's but just that is getting a lot of my energy right now, because you
Mm-hmm.
don't know all the answers, and you gotta listen.
That's
You
right.
gotta bring in. I work on the philosophy. None of us are smart as all of us. Okay, and you got to bring some other folks in. It can't just be my thoughts. And then, I'm by nature, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a CEO of a couple of companies, but I'm not the CEO when it comes to the church. You know what I'm saying? Got
Yes.
have
Mm-hmm.
to step back and say, okay, all of us, type deal. So God's working me in that way to help me to sort of refine and say, what role will you play in this? And you kind of sometimes you find you're pushing when you need to pull back type deal. So
Mm-hmm.
I have this philosophy: you need people, you need Nathans in our life to tell us,
Yes.
you got some blind spots here, Brother Scott. Being open to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's an area of growth that I'm kind of going through right now, and trying to listen as we kind of go down that road together. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect segue into the subtopic.
Okay.
So, what made you choose the intergenerational teamwork,
Mhm.
harnessing each generation's gifts for daily service and kingdom unity? Our People Growth Discipleship workbook is available for purchase on Amazon. Our three pillars are get your mind right, get your ministry right, and get your church right. This workbook is designed for new members and those who need a reset with God and transition from being spectators to disciples for the kingdom. If you want to check out the full system to see if it works for your congregation, check out the link in the show notes to learn more.
Yeah. Well, my day job right now is I took an appointment with the state of Tennessee about 4 years ago. It ends next year, and I'm working as the deputy commissioner for the Department of Labor and Workforce for the state. So I never thought I would
Mm-hmm.
work with the state or government because I've been entrepreneur, but it's been an eye-opening experience for me. And one of the things that's taking place there because I always trying to bring what am I doing and how does it apply to church in the workplace right now. For the first time, Kendra, there are 5 generations in the workplace. That's never happened in history before. 5 different generations, and it's causing all kind of challenges for employers because there's different need sets, values type deal, and one of the primary things that a CEO or an owner of a business has to do is create a culture in which those employees can thrive and grow and help the company grow. The employees are the greatest asset. Okay, now I'm going to use that, and I'm preaching that gospel to business all across the state every day. Just came back from a 3-day tourism type deal, talking about how do you got your culture, you got to take care of the culture, you got to understand this change type deal. Well, that exact same principles happening in the church. there are 5 generations in the church right now that we've never had before. You know what I'm saying? So the very so usually, and what's true, Kendra, what's taking place in the world reflects what's happening in the church as well. My challenge to myself and other leaders is we can't just stick our head in the sand and act like that doesn't exist. Okay. Now I'm not talking about changing doctrine. Okay, we got to stick,
Mm-hmm.
but how we minister and how we deliver that is judgment. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of gray where we want to make it black and white sometimes in the church. So I say, as we look at this intergenerational piece of it, I want to think about, because what I'm finding, Kendra, is the newer generations are more service in the community oriented. There's a lot more demand for leadership. What are we doing in the community? What are we doing? And it's not just about us taking care of us. Yes, we need to do that, but more so, if you look at the model with Christ, it's going out with the people. We had this model mantra that went on about 3 or 4 years ago that says the church has left the building. Okay. You know what I'm saying? And the whole model is we need to be out in the community, because I think that's going to help us evangelize more and attract more of the younger folks that's saying, man, we need to be about purpose. What are we doing? How are we changing folks' lives type deal? And that's really the model that the Lord gave to us. And I think that's a intergenerational, multi-generational piece. We got to kind of embrace that.
Yeah, that's amazing that you say that even in the workplace and in the church, there's this correlation of what's happening. So instead of, as you said, sticking our head in the sand,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, what does it look like to begin to make strides into intergenerational teamwork?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to write a minute. I'll tell you, I can't talk too long without writing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Kendra, and I'm not doing this because it's on my mind. So can you see that? Okay,
Yes.
okay. So I wrote a book about 2 years ago. Okay, and I did it for churches. Okay, because I'm a pastor. I love to teach. Okay, but it applies so much for work and everything. And the name of the book is "Stepping Outside of Our Comfort Zone." Real easy read, okay? And so I would say, as we look at this intergenerational piece of it, let me give you the kind of the the basis for the book, and then I'll connect the dots. So have you heard of of like the invisible fence with a dog?
Oh, yes.
So what happens is they'll put a device on a dog's neck, and then they will bury a wire around the perimeter and put flags up. And those flags, and the dog will receive a mild shock if it goes past that boundary, because the whole purpose is to keep it safe, right? Keep the dog safe. So the dog goes through this experience, and he'll go to where the flags are and gets the shock, and it stands back. He'll go to another area, gets shocked, stand back, and then it kind of understands, man, these flags mean pain. Then they'll remove a few flags,
Mhm.
and the dog will go test the area where there's no flag. Get the mild shock, and it goes to this, and okay, I understand now, even between the flags or something. And then what the last step is, Kendra, there'll be 4 flags that they'll leave up. And that dog one more time say, okay, now things are different, things are changed. And it'll test again, and it figures out within these 4 flags, that's my boundary. And if I go outside that, it's going to hurt. And then finally, Kendra, they'll take all the flags away. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen the dog inside there. It learns and knows that. It knows where it is. It's not even there, but it knows where that boundary is. And it'll run up to it. If it's chasing something, it'll stop right on that, and it'll start doing this barking, but it's not going to come past that line because it knows there's pain there. Okay. So,
Mhm.
so my analogy is human beings have invisible fences, and then the
Mhm.
invisible fences are our comfort zones, and they operate just like the invisible fence does with the dog. Okay. It's invisible.
Mm.
But inside of this is what we're comfortable, it's what we know, it's what we've always done, it's always worked, and we like it.
Mhm.
Outside of it, we'll look, but we're not trying to get out there because there's pain associated in going out here. And what I believe, this is the process of how God stretches our faith. stepping outside of our comfort zone. I think God stretches our faith. Out here's where opportunities are. This is where growth exists. Okay. New perspectives of doing things is outside of our comfort. It's not in what we know, what we've always done, is doing something different. Now, the principle is, and I talk about this in the book, no pain, no gain. To get to
Right.
that, you've got to experience some discomfort. You got to see what the dog hadn't figured out. What the dog hadn't figured out is if I run through the fence, it's going to hurt once, and then I'm out. I'm free. Okay? But listen, the pain of fear is so great, it stays inside there. And we learn the same way. And listen, what I say, I tell Elisha, I said, not only do individuals have comfort zones, leaderships have comfort zones, congregations have comfort zones, families have comfort zones. Excuse me. So the point is, and you'll see me. One of my favorite symbols is this sort of symbol, Kendra, and it's a pair of lenses. Okay, it's a pair of glasses, and it basically says we all have these lenses that we're wearing and how we see things. And I think we're talking about intergenerational and multi-generational perspectives is a different way of looking at things. And so I'm constantly challenging myself. You asked me the question on the very front of this podcast. What's my discipleship challenges right now? It's trying to go to this preparing for new leadership where we are right now. So part of this got to be, I've got to be acknowledge my mortality.
Yes.
Some people struggle with that. And I don't talk about, well, yeah, that's going to happen, right? I mean, and we look at all those examples, it happened. So acknowledging that is part of moving to the next, right? So to my point to you is this: is out here is where new opportunity. Matter of fact, what I tell individuals, Kendra, is as you step out here, your comfort zone expands. Then that's what, in other words, once we step out there and we do something, then we've got a new area to operate in that we haven't experienced before. And but so many times, Kendra, and I talk a lot about how fear, that's probably the greatest variable that keeps us in our comfort zone. Even in the church of
Yeah.
faith, doesn't matter how long we've been in the church, we have these comfort zones, and God is trying to take us out here. And sometimes we kind of become resistant because we don't want to change because it's different for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so true. And as you were talking, I was thinking, what is the discomfort? You shared with us, acknowledging our mortality, the fear behind what's to come. Can you make that even more practical? Because we're going through the same thing at South Central, a leadership transition. What is the discomfort itself? If you're thinking like boots on the ground, what are leaders and members thinking through that?
Well, one of the things I'm going to give you a couple models to talk about. So let's talk about fear a minute, okay? And I think what I found there's three kinds of fear that we have to deal with, okay? So the first type of fear, I'm gonna call it, is constructive. So constructive fear, Kendra, is the fear that we're born with. It's innate, okay? It helps us get out of harm's way when danger is present. If you're in a movie theater and someone says fire, okay, and they tell you before the movie starts, here, look at the exit signs, know where they are. Everybody's going to run toward. I was up in Kingsport, Tennessee for the last 3 days. Just got back last night doing a workforce conference, and at 2:20 a.m. in the morning, the fire alarm goes off in the hotel. I mean, 2:20 in the morning. Okay, and I jumped up. I knew exactly what was going on. I didn't start fussing and getting mad about, why is this going on. I'm like, there's a fire. I need to get out of here because This is a warning. Saying you don't fuss and get mad because it's going on. You say, "Hey, this is an indicator to tell you something's going on. You need to do something, right?" Got
Mm-hmm.
my hoodie on, hat, walked out, and as soon as I got to the front desk, they said, "We're sorry, it's a false alarm." I turned right around, and go back to them. I mean, it was hundreds of folks in the hotel that would go back to. But bottom line is, when that that alarm was to help me get out of yeah, there was some fear. I mean, man, is it outside the door? My thing was, when I open the door, do I see smoke? I mean, in other words,
Mm-hmm.
fear helps us get out of harm's way. Okay. Uh,
Yes.
the second type of fear is, I'm gonna call it the good fear, and it is consecrated,
Mm.
consecrated fear. Okay. Consecrated fear comes from, like, 1 John 4:18.
Yes.
John talks about fear has torment. He's a perfect love cast out fear. Perfect, complete, mature love.
Mm-hmm.
He said consecrate, cast out fear. In Ecclesiastes 12:13, as the wise man was closing out, he did this test kitchen of everything. And the very last words of that book says, "Let us hear the conclusion of this whole experiment. Fear
Mm-hmm.
God, keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man." So
Yes.
this kind of fear, Kendra, we need to be growing in every day. And that's a fear that's
Mm.
in awe of God and his awesomeness, his
Mm-hmm.
ability. We just got through praying about he's the creator, we're the created. Okay. So that's the good fear. Okay. So this is what we're born with:
Yes.
constructive. Consecrated is the good fear, and the scriptures over and over says, fear God, fear God, fear God. Okay. The bad fear, and that's what we're talking about that keeps us here, is called constrictive.
Mm.
Constrictive fear is not good for us. Matter of fact, it does
Mm.
exactly what it sounds like. It constricts, it chokes.
Mm.
That very same scripture that we talked about, he says, constrictive fear has torment, has mental
Mm.
agitation. It will keep you hijacked. I tell people, constrictive fear will keep you locked in a room with an open door. The door is open, you think it's locked, and you won't move. It's open,
Mm.
but if in my mind it's locked, I won't try to get out. I won't try, you know what I'm saying? So there's things we get locked in a room with an open door when constrictive fear takes over our lives. You ever seen someone that's got so
Right.
fearful and they just froze, they can't move, and someone has pushed them, get them out of the way? That's constrictive fear.
Yes.
Uh, I told, when you have experiences like, let's say that a family has a young child that drowns at an early age in a swimming pool. Imagine
Mm.
what the fear is going to be like with that second child. If they're
Right.
not careful, they'll they'll make that child scared of water, and they'll go to the other end of the pendulum because that bad experience, and that's the worst thing to do. You know what I'm saying? Is not even
Mm-hmm.
make it a bad thing type deal, but our fear makes us do not logical things.
Right.
Leadership, fearful of, we can't let these young folk take over. We can't, man. They'll change everything. I mean, there's all kind of that's constrictive fear.
Mm-hmm.
Constrictive fear is what keeps us in that comfort zone. We
Mm.
here. Our church has a community counseling center that's next door, and can't tell, got some really really good counsel over there. But you talk about people in abusive relationships, and one thing you see over is
Mm-hmm.
someone, people willing to stay in that relationship because of the fear of, if they leave, they don't know what normal looks like. So
Right.
it's not good. They're being abused. They're being harmed, but they stay stuck there because of fear. Constricted fear won't let them move out of that.
Right.
So
Right.
I believe this, and I tell folks, what's important is that we got to have self awareness of my stuff. And I'll say this earlier, Kendra, when we talked about, you talking about awareness. We need. I told you, we need Nathans in our life and
Right.
tell us about blind spots. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Show you another model. I'm going to show you another model that I use a lot of times. It's called the Johari window. Johari
Mm.
window. Okay. So So up at the top of the Johari window is what others see and know about me. And on this side, on the vertical side here, is what I know about me. Okay. So then there's some know about me and some things I don't know about me. And there's some things that others know about me and things that they don't know about me. Here's how this grid works. It says there's some things that others know about me, okay, and things that I know about me. That's the revealed me. Everybody knows it. Brother Scott talks fast. Brother Scott walks fast. I mean, there's some things just physically been around me you learn to know because okay, right? But there's some things that I know about me, Kendra, that other people don't know about me. That's the hidden me.
Right.
And I only let in there who I want to let in there. I may have some struggles going on, but I may only say, well, listen, I know this person, I trust them, I'll share this and they can kind of help me, but I don't tell that to everybody, right? Kendra, there's some areas that others know and see about me that I don't see it. That's our blind spots. And we all have them.
Yes.
My perfect example of that is David with Nathan. David had Uriah murdered.
My book, Pathway to Patience, How to Give God Control So You Can Fulfill Your Ministry, is great for personal devotion, small groups, and churches. But don't just take my word for it. Ira Booker says, oh, how you are teaching us through your life how to trust God while walking through our written life by God right into our ministry to bring glory to God. Or Dr. Nicholas Glenn, who says, if you ever found yourself in the balance of self-will versus God's will, this book will be a great benefit to you. Or Tiffany Malone, who says, this book is a combination of open honesty, personal testimony, and biblical truth, all bound together in a how to let go and let God manual. Now go ahead and get your copy on Amazon today.
He slept with Bathsheba. The child's on the way. He tries to cover up basically what's going on. He tries to bring Uriah back and tell him to go into his wife. He's a man. I'll come back, but I'm not going in because my fellow brothers out there in the field, and I'm not going to come in and have intimacy with my wife. I should be out there fighting. So that didn't work. So then they had to send him to. He does all this whole cover up type deal, and he he does it all. And then Nathan comes to him and says, David, let me tell you a story. There's a rich guy that's got everything he ever could want. And then there's this guy that lives next door to him that has one ewe lamb, loved it like his own child, like his daughter. And the rich guy had a visitor to come by, and he takes the lamb, the only lamb that God loved, and had it killed, and that's what they ate for dinner. What do you think about that, David? And Kendra, David he became uncorked almost, right? He said, as God lives, he will pay for what he was just he had righteous indignation about what had occurred. He said, there's no way God's going to deal with him. He is absolutely convicted, convinced type deal. And Nathan says, that's you, David. I'm talking. And what happens is what's so precious about that, Kendra, is when David looked in the mirror and saw that, his whole countenance changed. Matter of fact, God rewarded him for, matter of fact, he would go back and say, he's a man after my own heart. What?
Yes.
What? Was what he did? He says, it ain't about what he did, it's about his heart to his attention. You know what I'm saying? And then David will later on in the 51st Psalm would say, God is not interested in just me bringing sacrifices and worship. That's not what pleases God. He's what's precious to God is a broken and a contrite heart. That's what God values.
Yes.
That's what God values. You know what I'm saying? So when David, that's my boy. That's what I'm talking about. That's where I want everybody to be. Baby. So with that, Kendra, what I'm saying is that when we have blind spots and someone brings it to us, our attention, we gotta own that and say, Lord have mercy. I didn't see that. I didn't know
Mm.
matter of fact, this last cube here, there's some things that others don't know about me and I don't know about me. I call that the to be revealed part of me. Okay. There's some things that's gonna happen in my life, and I'm gonna say, I can't believe I said that or thought that way. Because the right situation,
Hmm.
the wrong situation, gonna hit me at the wrong time, and a part of me is gonna come out that I didn't even know was there. And then God says, okay, now come on, let's work on it. You know what I'm saying? Okay,
Hmm.
so even as we step out of our comfort zone and we find things about ourselves, our biases, our prejudices type deal that we have, and it's revealed, we've got to have the right kind of heart to step out of this, feel the discomfort of it, and say, God still's got us. You know what I'm saying? God still has us.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that's what we want. That's what we want people to be individual. Then the church can move as it needs to move, and that doesn't mean we're going to all feel comfortable about it. We're going to we want to kind of be judicious about it, but at the same time, we don't have to have all the answers to make a move. Colin Powell wrote his book. He said, you know what? He's our Secretary of Defense for this whole country. He said, you know what I found out? He said, if I've got about 60%, maybe 7% information, I can make a decision because the other 30% really don't change anything. So
Hmm.
get 99.9%, and then the rest, and then it's too late. You know what I'm saying? He said, and there's a lot of truth to that from a leadership standpoint. We don't have to have all the answers figured out before we make a move.
Yes. That's so good because I see how each section relates to the next one, coming out of the comfort
Yeah, yeah.
zone, and then the fear, and then the Johari window. It's interesting because if you don't deal with those things, then it kind of does choke out the intergenerational
Oh,
piece of the teamwork, the passing the baton.
absolutely.
So it's almost like this is the framework.
It is so insightful when you say that, Kendra. If you remember in the book of Genesis, chapter 4, when Cain brings an offering to God and Abel brings an offering to God, God accepted Abel's and rejected Cain's. And Cain becomes just tore up mad. Just and the Lord comes to him. Yeah, and what he does, Kendra, the Lord starts and it's Genesis chapter 4, verses 5-7. He says, why are you angry?
Mm.
Why has your countenance fallen? Don't you know if you do good, you're gonna get accepted too? So he asked him, so really, and listen, God wasn't asking him questions for his own, he's trying to help Cain come to self-awareness, right?
Right.
Matter of fact, he would use the same technique a few in Genesis chapter 1 or 2 when Adam and Eve had sinned. And the Bible says God's
Mm.
walking in the cool of the day, and Adam and Eve have partaken of the fruit and taken fig leaves and covered themselves up and hiding. And the Bible says God's walking through the day. He said, question, where are you, Adam? He says, I'm hiding. Why are you hiding, Adam? Question 2, I'm scared. Why are you scared, Adam? Because I'm naked. Who told you was naked, Adam? All those questions were for self-awareness.
Hmm.
And I believe, Kendra, of this framework, how we move generation, we got to be able to ask ourselves the right questions.
Mm.
Sometimes, I think sometimes we ask ourselves the wrong questions, and that's the reason we can't move on. And I found this to be true, Kendra, in my counsel and work with churches. Asking why questions really usually don't get you anywhere. Why such? Why such? Why? You might be right, you might be wrong, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change it. The why doesn't change. Why does not move you to action. When you say, what is it I need to do differently? Now that moves me to doing something. But why just keeps
Yes.
me stuck back locked in that room with an open door with just a house. I don't know why she did. I don't know why. You know what I'm saying? Why doesn't usually move us to action, okay? What am I going?
Right.
differently kind of moves us toward that. And leaderships and individuals have to kind of have, I think it's one of the, as part of this framework, asking myself the right question, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
having people in my life that can speak truth to me.
Mm.
And we need,
That,
we need this board of directors, right? You need a board of directors,
mm-hmm.
board of directors that's giving you feedback. Well, here's what we're looking at. And matter of fact, the Bible says, in a multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. Okay. In a multitude of
Yes.
so I think as we look at this multi-generational piece of it, I gotta come to the Lord and say, and Kendra was so powerful is when I can say, God, listen, Lord, I know we need to move, but Father, I got some fears about this. And I know you already know it, but I'm acknowledging it to you. And I need you to hold my hand as I walk through this and help me calm the constrictive fears that's in my life. And let me be more in
Yes.
that construct. I mean, it's that type of intimacy, Kendra, that God, that's the kind of heart he wants. He wants us acknowledging our weaknesses. Paul's whole thing was, Lord, take this thorn. If you can take this thorn, he said, no, no, I'm not going to do it, Paul, because in your weakness is my strength made perfect. You can
Mm.
acknowledge your stuff, what you can't do, then that's when I step in and this thing works. You know what I'm saying? So it's that kind
Yes.
of hard.
Yeah, that's amazing you say that because it does take that kind of heart to move forward to even be able to ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
Because most of the time I guess you're asking the wrong questions because you might have the wrong heart, wrong motives, you have that fear that's choking you out. But the second you have that intimate time with the Lord and spend that time with him for him to show you where you are, then you're almost in a sense able to ask the right questions.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Simon Sinek wrote a book. Start with his deals was kind of start with the why, but from the standpoint of what's the purpose, what you're trying to get accomplished, what is this all about? And from the Christian standpoint, the why is glorifying God. At the end of the day,
mm-hmm.
everything we do, how does this glorify God? How does God get the credit? How does God get the? So that's the right why. But all the other whys that I come up with are kind of centered around me and kind of what I want to happen versus what God. So if I release and say, really, it's all about God, that needs to be my kind of focus, to move toward things. And it'll be, Kendra, they'll be different. We'll get challenged in ways, we won't ever be without blind spots, but we need to keep people in our lives that will speak truth to us and not keep us going down a road that's not productive for us. So you got to be able to have the right people in your life to get the right counsel. It is tremendously difficult, Kendra, for people to give you counsel because they normally counsel out of their own fear. That if or their own hurt. You see what I'm saying? That's why counselors are so powerful because they're trained to kind of put their stuff on the shelf and not counsel you based upon, you think about someone who's been through three just terrible relationships, and then someone comes to them saying, would you date da 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 da? Can you imagine what that counsel's gonna be? You know what I'm saying? If they're not
Yeah.
they're trying none of them in account, don't try. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be out of hurt and pain versus objectivity. So we got to be able to, even with our friends, we have got to be able to say, you know what, there is. I know they love me, but they can't put their stuff on the shelf. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be able to kind of evaluate counsel even when it comes to you.
Yes. Yes, that makes perfect sense. So it seems as if this self-awareness, intimacy with God, having the right counsel is the foundations of teamwork when the leadership and the congregation they have this type of a mindset. What is next? What does that look like for everyone to come together to just do the Lord's will?
Yeah, yeah. So what I often talk with leadership about in churches is what it is, and that's why the needs analysis is such a vital tool because what it does is it just gives you a snapshot of kind of where you are right now. And I tell folks, to me, one of the most critical pieces of the needs analysis is the demographic information because it tells you, as it stands right now, what your church is going to look like in the next 5, 10 years
Mm.
from age standpoint and the different, because we break that down to the different generations and, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the baby boomers are still the biggest. And because one of the things that happen right now in the church is the baby boomers they've got about 8 more years and then they're all retired. And that's gonna and so you got to be able to we can't go by gut. We got to go by data. And I tell
Mm.
people, leaders in the church, there's nothing sinful about having a survey and looking at the data and here's what the data says. Now as we move, we're gonna move with God's spirit upon us and make no decision. But the data is the data. And we can go
Yes.
by, well, I know, we know our, well, okay. But when you take it out, and particularly, and I appreciate congregations like yourself, Brother Dublin, and others we've done, where we come in and someone outside brings that information. And it's because I'll tell them, because when I'm talking with leadership, I'm pushing back because I told them I don't have a dog in the fight, right? I'm not tied in there, so I can ask questions and push back in certain areas that lets leadership know here's where you probably got a little resistance. You ought to really check that out. Why are you so dug in right there? You know what I'm saying? So those are that's the beauty of consultants come in and say, okay, let me kind of see some things, some trends, because there's some patterns and trends that's happening. That if you're gonna do something different, it's gonna continue to go that way. So you got to be able to take the data, and then you got to keep revisiting the data. You can't just it
Mm.
can't be a one and done. It's okay. Let's look back now. Where are we right now? Has this changed or is the trend? Because it is it's concerning the number of churches that are closing, shutting their doors. The
Mm.
baby boomers and are going away. And then there's no planning coming behind that, and churches are just kind of just. I mean, it's almost at a incredible sort of rate right now. But I think having these sort of discussions helps leadership to sort of so okay, what do we need to do different? Okay, and then be open to information. Okay, because information
Mm.
changes how we look at things.
Yes.
Perspective. I use the subject. I use this story all the time. Stephen Covey is one of my favorite. He's passed now. He wrote Seven Habits. Covey
Mm-hmm.
says that he was on a bus headed in Chicago, and he said he gets on the bus and it's just about he said it was about 11, almost 11 o'clock at night, downtown New York, and he says he's on the
Mm-hmm.
bus, he's gotten off, and nobody's on the bus, and he's got about a half hour to get to his community out there. He said, "Man, I'm gonna read the paper and just kind of be chill out here." And he's sitting there reading his paper, it's quiet, but riding, enjoying the beautiful scenery of the nightlife of New York. He says about two exits down, a man gets on the bus and he's got two young kids with him. And the man sits probably
Mm.
up here in front, and the kids go to the back, to a boy and a girl, and they're just as loud and rambunctious, and just so the bus takes off, and they're loud now. So the dad's up here like he's ignoring them, kind of, and they're getting loud and louder,
Mm-hmm.
and he's becoming more and more agitated, just agitated. So man, I was going to read my paper, da da da, get quiet. So they even balled up some paper and was kind of playing with it and throwing the paper back and forth. And then finally the paper comes up and hits his newspaper and rolls down it. And he's about had all he can have. Okay. And he said something today. He said, sir. He said, can you kind of get your kids under control? I'm trying to read my paper. They're disturbing you. So he's kind of fussing. So dad turns around and tells the kids, scolds them, sit down, be quiet. The man's trying to read his paper. You got up been too loud. He said he turns to Covey. He says, "Sir, I am so sorry." He said, "My mind is in 1,000 places." He said, "We just left the hospital. Their mom died tonight." And Covey said, immediately his agitation changed to empathy. And he said he had a conversation with his dad about a little bit from Stamford. He said, "I'm so sorry, praying for you." He said he gets up and goes to the back and plays with the kids the rest of the way in, and said, matter of fact, their stop would end up being before his, and he walks them up to the front when their dad says time for us to go. Told him he's got them their prayers, thinking about them type deal. He said, but it was one of the most teachable moments in his life. And he said, all that happened was he got new information and it changed how he saw the situation. And what I'm saying, and I say to leaders often, you got to be open to information because it can change your paradigm. But you got to be open to
Right.
it and it can change how we look at things. So that's another principle for all of us individually and as leadership. We got to be open to information and data because it can literally change how he said it wasn't, he said it was immediate. His frustration went to empathy because he said, man, I'm sitting there thinking this, and now this data showed me it's a whole different story going on here. That's a
Yes.
life lesson for all of us.
Yes, that's amazing that you say that because it just makes me think about the gospel. At one point we're living in darkness and then we come into the light, but it's because we know some new information
Absolutely.
to do something different.
Paul said was blind, now I see. You know what I'm saying? That's what the song.
Exactly. Exactly. This is amazing because on the back end, like I guess on the front end, you always want to say or ask the questions, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? But it's more of like, who can we be first
Absolutely.
before we get into the doing, who God wants us to be. And let's collect this data. Once we get it, then it's going to change our perspective. And then now we can figure out how the generations can work together even more effectively.
Yes, yes. There's a old Chinese, well, not, it was actually an African proverb, and it says, alone I go fast, together we go far. We need to be about going far. We need
Yes.
about how do we take this congregation to reach its potential. One of the things that in the book I mentioned earlier, Purpose Driven Life, he talks about what our 5 purposes are. One of those, he says, we're all shaped for service. That's one of the purposes, one of our 5 purposes. We all have a spiritual shape that God has given us to serve with. And when you put that body all fit to join together, that's the way we glorify God and reach our potential, and the church reaches potential. But we encourage that with members. You bring that piece to the table, and it helps to get that done. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so when you start to, or when you collect the data and you see where the church is, what are some of those next steps?
It's kind of like the principle you plan your work, and then you work your plan. So you have to say,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell people what I encourage is once you see the data and you look at it, it's okay. What is the, and I use the phrase, what's the lowest hanging fruit? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at fruit in a tree, there's some fruit that's really low hanging. You can pick it. It's ready to ripe, easy to get to, get some wins from that. And there's some real premium fruit at the very top of the tree, but it takes a lot more energy and effort to get up there to get that. So I said, like, prioritize it. It's like everything else, Kendra. I think we have to have some win
Mm-hmm.
to keep us motivated. So when you start looking at that plan, you got to look at what your resources are and what are the strengths of the congregation, and then another piece of it, what are the needs of the community. When we decided to put our counseling center in, it wasn't by chance. We did surveys with the community. We talked with leaders. We talked to the mayor, police department, community type. And said, okay, what does this congregation need from a standpoint? And clothing probably was not a food bank, but clothing and counseling was that's kind of what we've done. We've got a clothing closet and a counseling center, and they've kind of sort of fed up each other. But you got to kind of say, and that's different based on the community. But what I know this is true, Kendra, when I challenge leadership with is what's challenging for the church is the question we got to ask ourselves as leaders in church, how do we remain relevant in the community that we're in? How
Mm-hmm.
do we remain relevant in the community? I say this to every church. I said to Brother Dublin and all the leadership there as well. If our congregation today, your congregation today, were to go out of business, close its doors for whatever reason, and if the community is not in sackcloth and ashes and asking what in the world we're going to do because such and such is not here anymore, then we're not making the impact we need to be making. Because we need to be making that sort of impact. Everybody saying, man, Lord, what is the community going to do? Such and such is gone. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's kind of the relevance we need to have in the community because we're there and we just taking care of us and nobody else. There's all kind of needs around the community. We're not known for being there to take care of that. Then because that's the door to leading people to Christ. I call people
Yes.
this, Kendra, go this. I call if this is Christ and the cross, which we're often trying to get people to, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different entry points that the church can do that can introduce people to Christ. A food drive, a clothing drive, a health fair, a VBS. I mean, those are
Mm-hmm.
just entry points, okay? And then once you do it, it could be a picnic. I mean, whatever. But then after people come in and they've done that, then you want to start an entry path, right? Entry point
Yes.
leads to an entry path, and they you build a relationship with them. And that's the way because you ultimately you want people connected to Christ, not to the church. So many times, what's happened? We baptize folk and we've emphasized the church. West East, and so people get mad. They leave West East, think they're leaving West East. Well, no, your relationship was with Christ, right? I
Right.
mean, that's who the relationship with. You just happen to be worshiping with this family here, but the relationship with Him. So, as
Mm-hmm.
we teaching people, it's not with this local congregation. We're worshiping together and serving together, but that's who the relationship's with. That's the head of the church. That's our our head. And I think
Yes.
different ministries give us an opportunity to expose people. Here's what Christ did. He met needs. They were following him, and the disciples got mad. They said, "Lord, they just following you for the food." He said, "I know it, but we're gonna feed." I'm never getting mad. Lord, they just want to go. He said, "I know it, but we're gonna feed them. Then we're gonna teach them." You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Amen. Amen. I love that. As we come to a close, as we're getting close to our 1 hour mark, is there anything that I have not asked you that you want to share about intergenerational teamwork?
We've covered some really good information here. I think, Kendra, I think in order to meet that sort of challenge, we've got to understand that it's not a matter of if we have comfort zones, we do have them.
Mm,
And kind of being able to say, okay, what are my comfort zones and what are the areas that gives me sort of angst about addressing this multi-generational piece of it. A lot of times with most leadership is tied to the money. Well, the young folks coming in, they don't have a whole lot of income. So, so okay, all right. Well, I understand that, but are we going to let that be the reason why we don't? You know what I'm saying? But I got to
mhm,
say that's what I'm. You know what I'm saying? They want to do some things different we've done. Okay, I mean, okay, so let's talk about the yin and yang of that. What's good? Because here's the bottom line: is Kendra, when I'm dead and gone, they make a chance. Anything I can do about it anyway, right? When I'm gone, the thing I'm gonna have to control. You know what I'm saying? So trying to give some guardrails up, but I've got to. And then the other side of this is even with that doesn't mean everything that the new generation wants to do. That's what we're going to do. So they've got to have.
right.
I use the term balance, okay, and maturity to be able to say, well, you know what? These saints have been here a long time and have sustained through a lot of storm type deal. There's some things we can learn from them. Okay. And
Yes.
and need to respect and honor that and bring that sort of mindset versus with a mindset of going to tear up everything everyone's done. So it's got to be it's a give and take type mindset of how do we make the church better, and what's my role in that. One of the things you got real
Yes.
strong commitment from saints was there that you don't see as much with the younger generation. The commitment level was really really strong. So how do you pass that on? How do but I got to be willing to say that I need it and agree that I need it in order to receive it, right? So
Right.
this self-awareness cuts both ways. Like I said, I think um, maybe having some classes to talk about it,
Mhm.
and one of the things is I do with all the technology now we can do webinars. You know what I'm saying? Webinars can happen and you can bring in folks
Sure.
and it's at a very low cost because it's just like this, an interactive type deal. So I'm just saying, but that's different than when we've done things, right? So even Elisha open
Right.
to looking at trying to educate and train ourselves different than we have in times past as well, and take advantage of the knowledge
Amen.
that we've got. So, but I appreciate you so much and what you're doing with this podcast, because that's talking about shaping, serving the way you're shaped. You obviously
Yes.
have captured part of that, what you're doing, and what you're doing in this ministry, Kendra, is really exciting and energizing me to see folks doing things like you're doing in this way.
Thank you. Praise the Lord.
Well, there you go.
It surely wasn't my way. I wasn't thinking about any of this.
That's the way it
But
works.
I had to be, as you said, open to new information from God.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's good. But continue to let him stretch you.
Yes,
Mm,
sir. Yes, sir. So my last question, which I ask everyone
okay.
that comes on this podcast, is who is God to you in this season?
In this season of my life, God is more. I have more of a, and I don't say this irreverently, friendship type of relationship with God. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to God more casually now than I've ever have in my life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not to take away the reverence of Him, but when I can just
Yes.
so one of the things that I'm doing, I try to do each night, Kendra, is I stop and before I build in my head, I stop and say, Lord, let's recap. Let me recap the day with you, and I
Mm.
look back and say, Lord, this was well. I represented you well here. Da, da, da. Lord, I dropped the ball here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I know why. I go back and look and kind of see what led to that. Was it pride? What was it? Lord, if you give me another day tomorrow, I'm gonna work better at that. So it's just a real
Yes.
casual sharing with him kind of where I'm at, and then every day recapping. I know it's not about works, but it's about me every day, that I can acknowledge what went well, what didn't go well, and just ask for strength.
Yes.
As I said earlier, and I call it, we're doing this thing called life together, and so that friendship type, casual, lets me. I'm just connecting him on a level like I've never done before, Kendra. So,
Mm.
mhm.
That's amazing. And it is definitely a biblical response because even in Psalm 63, they call it a psalm of, friendship.
Exactly.
And David is just talking about God all throughout the day and his interaction with him or him longing for him because he's in the desert. So I love that response.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you again so much for joining us for People Growth Discipleship. Brother Scott, I thank you for your expertise and everything that you have brought here. And for all of you out there that are continuing to watch, we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you much. Enjoy being with you. God bless.
Thank you for watching and listening to the People Growth Discipleship podcast. Don't just grow your church, grow your people. Please like, comment, and share this conversation to help us reach a wider audience. And go ahead and do it today because tomorrow is too late to be great.